My name is Gabby and I'm a wet and wet oil painter. Today I want to talk about paintbrushes. Paintbrushes are obviously one of our most important tools, and there's so many paintbrushes out there, it's really confusing. I went through at least 1,000 paintbrushes, trying different brands, different styles, and I have some favorites that I think might be beneficial to other oil painters. And so I want to talk about them. Maybe give some of you who are newer at this a little bit of direction so you have a little better idea of what to look for in paintbrushes and what works, what doesn't work. And I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible, so stay tuned. So I'm going to start sort of big and work my way small. The first paintbrush that I want to talk about is your standard 2-inch brush that you use. It should be a natural fiber brush and it should be soft. So there are some different brands out there. My favorite brand that I found, I actually get at home improvement stores. We have a place called Menards that is in our area, and other home improvement stores would also have these. My favorite brand is called Purdy, P-U-R-D-Y, Purdy, and it looks like this. Hard to see the name on it. But these are very, very soft yet sturdy enough bristles. They're good at blending and laying down your color. Now this one isn't actually 2-inch. This is, I don't know, 3, 4, 5-inch. This is ginormous. So I don't actually use this one, but it's good for demonstrating. So definitely soft, but not too soft. Any of these from home improvement stores, as long as they're good quality and they are natural fiber brushes, work. Now there is another brush that you can find at a lot of these places called a chip brush, and this one's just a 1/2-inch one. Chip brushes work good for some things for oil painting, but for laying down your color, they really don't work. Yeah, they're cheap, but they don't work very well. These Purdy brushes, you can usually get like a 2-inch one for $10 to $15, and they're really decent. It's good to have like a couple of those on hand. We'll talk about this chip brush again because I have it in my hand. This 1/2-inch chip brush is really good for doing like bushes and shrubbery and stuff, and some stuff with texture. So don't discount those completely, but I wouldn't expect to use those for your basic laying down of color. Now, another sort of 2-inch brush that you can use looks like this. They come in lots of different brands. This one is an art color, and this one is like a yellow nylon. This specific one, the nylon, is really, really soft. Good for not having so many brush strokes, but they soak up paint like sponges, and you will go through a lot of wasted paint, a lot of wasted paint thinner. I use a fair amount of paint thinner. I don't do like liquid white or magic white or anything like that. I just make my own by mixing cheap oily oil paint with some paint thinner, and I use Gamsol as my paint thinner. This one is another one that's similar to that. It has a little bit harder fiber brush. This one is also essentially a 2-inch brush. Now this is my favorite brand. A little bit blurry, but it is called Princeton Aspen. They are white nylon brushes. They are very silky, but very stiff at the same time. So another kind of background brush then that you can use is a white nylon brush like this. I have them in like 1-inch and 2-inch. I use them quite a bit. I also use them for doing like some grass lines. And they are nice. They're fairly easy to clean. They do soak up paint, but not nearly as much as a brush like this does. I love this brush. I actually haven't used this one specifically because it's a little bit bigger than I need it to be. So this is a natural goat hair brush, and I wish you could feel it. It is super, super, super soft. So I use these after I do my like background on my picture, and I use it in a very soft, very circular motion, and it takes those brush marks out completely. I use one of these pretty much every time I do a picture, and all I do is landscapes. And they work really, really well those goat hair brushes. You can usually find like a set of them for like, I don't know, 3 of them for $15-20, and absolutely worth having. Let's keep on going. So I only own one Bob Ross brush because I'm cheap and I like to have a handful of brushes of the same brush so that I can have a clean one if I need one. So the one that I do have from Bob Ross is this half size round brush. And this is good for doing like, well, it's supposed to be good for doing like foliage and, you know, grasses and shrubbery and stuff. I use it every now and again, but I can't say I love it because the paint really sticks to it. The bristles are fairly hard. And yeah, the paint just really likes to stick to the bristle and not come off the picture. So, or not come off the brush onto the picture. So I'm not a big fan of those. A type of brush, like a shape of brush that I really like to use is called a mop brush. Now this one is actually a makeup brush, which is fine as long as the fibers aren't too soft. If they're really soft and squishy, they won't work at all. And these require a fair amount of paint thinner to get the paint to come off the brush. These also do soak up a lot of paint thinner and a lot of paint. So you have to be careful with them. And there are many, many mop brushes that are actual art type of brushes. Another one that I have, this is a Princeton Select, and it's called a Lunar Mop. I got this at Blick. If you have a Blick in your area and you've never been to one, oh, totally go there. They're the coolest places. The first time I walked down their brush aisle, I felt like I just died and gone to heaven. It was amazing. So a lunar mop, but any mop brush, these are really good for doing shrubbery and stuff like that. So definitely, if you don't have any mop brushes, they are an absolute must. For doing pine trees, I don't like using fan brushes. I don't like fan brushes in general. I like filbert brushes. So a filbert brush is rounded on the top and it is flat. This specific one is an Artist's Loft Sorrento. Now, it's okay. It's a white nylon again. It's a little bit stiffer. But I prefer to use a different brush in this brand. And I wanted to show you this one because it's easier to see it on the handle. The brush that I prefer in this brand is their fan brush. And again, I don't use these for doing pine trees because I'm really, really bad at it. But they do work. The only thing I've ever been able to paint a pine tree with when it comes to a fan brush is one of these Artist's Loft Sorrentos. I use these for making palm trees. I also use them when I'm doing some waves and clouds. So the Artist's Loft Sorrento. This one is a size 6. I think that's a little bit big. They have like a 4 and a 5, and I like them because once you start getting into these longer bristles, they become a little bit hard to control. My favorite filbert brush that I have looks like this. It's silver. I can't really show you the label because it's already wore off. It is called a Royal and Langnickel Zen brush, and I have one by a different style in that brand. I don't know if you can really see it or not, but it's this really pretty silver color. And the only brush that I like of theirs is their filbert. It is so good for doing pine trees. The quality of the pine trees that I come up with these, it's like they almost do the painting for me. It's incredible. So this brush, this filbert that I love, this Royal and Langnickel, this one is a 25 millimeter, and they have smaller ones. The only complaint I have about this particular brush is the fact that they fall apart very easily. And I've had to replace mine a couple times because literally the whole bristles, and you can almost see it in this one, how it's kind of uneven. They start to fall out and then it just falls out in huge pieces. A kind of a cool brush that I have found that I really like is this squirrel tail brush. And these come in different brands, but they look like this. Let's see if I can take this top off and then get it back on. So when they first come, they're very hard. These are made for watercoloring. But I use them for, you know, once you break them apart and they become very soft, they're very good for doing some shrubberies and trees and stuff. This one is brand new. I haven't used it. This one's a little bit bigger than I need it to be. I think you can usually find these for like a set of them for, I don't know, $20, $30, but they're a cool little set to have. I want to back up just for a second when I was talking about my beloved goat hair brushes. These are also made for watercoloring. One thing I do suggest is if you go to a store and you look at brushes, a lot of times they will have them labeled as painting with acrylic or for oil or for watercolor, and I really think it's important to kind of break those boundaries and try different stuff. Even though this is made for watercolor, it is wonderful for oil, so don't let that hold you back. Another filbert that I really like, again, is my Princeton Aspen, and this one is a long filbert. I don't know if it's actually called that. It's called an Egbert. So it is like longer, and it's nice and narrow, and I can do some really cool stuff with this too. It's got fibers all over it. I got a lot of brushes that I've bought that were brand new, but they were like sold by somebody. I don't know where they come up with these brushes, but it is a Royal in Langnickel, and it's just this black, but they have really nice long handles. This is the fan brush. I have a whole bunch of these, like different shapes and stuff, and they're really nice. They're what you would call a yellow nylon. Now, as a fan brush, it's a little bit too soft, but I use like the flat ones and the angled brushes. I use those a lot. They're really nice. This is another filbert that I have, and what is this thing? This is a Master's Touch filbert, and it's made out of hog hair, and this is another brush that I got in a big set. The problem for me with hog hair brushes is they like to hog the paint. They like to hold on to the paint and not let me have the paint back off. So I've never really been a big fan of hog bristle brushes. I have this funky little brush here, and it kind of tears up and it's flat. I believe they would call this a cat's tongue. Yes, a cat's tongue brush. These again are used for either doing watercolor. Another type of brush that I've seen that's similar to this is for using for doing pinstriping on cars, and you can also use those for oil painting too, as long as your paint is thin enough. Now back to this Royal and Langnickel Zen. I wanted to show you this brush specifically. I don't use this brush, and the reason I don't use it is because it's too soft. All it will do is basically hold on to your paint. So if it's really, really soft and long, it's not really going to work for oil painting. Let's slide down into our skinny brushes. So these are called liner brushes or script brushes. This again is a Princeton Aspen. I have a few of these, and I've used these. I use these all the time. I use these for doing like, tree trunks and grasses and stuff. So having a liner brush or a script brush, or I call them a whippy brush because I whip with them. These are absolutely priceless to have, but you can definitely go down the wrong path with it. So I prefer to buy these as long as they're long and really, really skinny. And I have found, this brush here, it looks a little ratty, that manicurist brushes for doing nails work really well because they tend to have very few fibers and they tend to be very long. So as long as there's enough paint thinner, and you want your paint to be the consistency of like ink, like India ink, that is, these long skinny brushes, they're great, especially manicurist brushes. I got a set of brushes that I'm going to show you really quick. And the reason I'm going to show you these is they are white nylon brushes, and I showed you a little bit of them before. They are a brand that I got on Amazon. I have a couple sets of them, and they're like $15-20 for the set. The set looks like that. They have all sorts of different brushes. And for their price, they are really, really good brushes. They tend to hold their shape fairly well. They are soft, but not too soft. I usually take these when I travel, and they have a whole variety. There's a specific brush in here that I wanted to talk about. So this is what they would call a liner brush, okay? The problem with a round brush like this, for me, is that they're too fat. They have too many bristles, and so they don't really make nice fine lines. And the reason I use those is for making nice fine lines. So this is definitely a set that you could consider buying. So I tried to go through that as fast as I possibly could. I know it's a lot of information. I'll leave information about these brushes in the credits, but I hope that gave you some guidance as to what to look for. Anything, again, that's really long and soft doesn't work very well. In my opinion, anything that's really stiff doesn't work very well. It works, like the hog bristles, they work really good if you're doing like dry oil painting for getting texture and stuff, but they don't work phenomenal for doing wet and wet painting, which is mostly what I do. So I hope that helped. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section of the video and I will do my best to address them. Until next time, I'm Gabby. Happy painting!